Hi everyone, it's Matt. I am back with the third and final part of the standard event on the 52-week challenge I'm doing with a new standard deck each week. So we are continuing with our Bant deck, and we're going to try to win out with our last two matches here. Overall, I've had a lot of fun playing this deck still, so I think that it has a couple different ways it can go depending on the metagame. I'm considering adding an Agent of Treachery into the main deck if we see a lot of Planeswalkers on the other side of the metagame. But right now I like how it is. Alright, so we are up against a green aggressive deck. It may be a Gruul deck. Let's go ahead and scry. And I think I actually do want this island. That will allow us to play Teferi on time without shocking ourselves. So I'm going to keep it. Also making sure we get our lands for Nissa and Elspeth seems okay. So the plan is Breeding Pool tapped, and then Teferi bouncing Pelt Collector on the next turn. Depending on what the board looks like, we can also consider bouncing something else. Alright, and here I think I actually may just bounce the Paradise Druid and pinch them on mana. It is going to cost me a little bit of extra damage, but it feels like it's worth it.
Sorry I'm late.
Go ahead and do that.
I'll protect you.
And next turn, probably we're playing Tamiyo and looking for a Shatter the Sky. They should probably ignore Teferi here and just put us to 7 and play out the Druid. That would actually just threaten lethal next turn, so unfortunately that could mess up our Tamiyo plan quite a bit. But if they do attack Teferi, the Tamiyo plan could be good. Alright, unfortunately they have correctly ignored Teferi, and we're going to need to naturally draw the Shatter the Sky just like we planned it. Alright. Yeah, this is pretty incredible. We're going to do this on their turn. Or are we? This does give them access to a little bit more mana, but if they use that to play something else we can destroy, that feels pretty good. So, yeah, we'll just go ahead and do this on their turn. The only thing that punishes us for this is if they somehow have a non-creature 3-mana spell. But we can go ahead and destroy everything. And yeah, that was a very lucky draw, I'm not gonna lie. But you know what they say, it's better to be lucky than good. Alright, and here we can get our Nissa down. And I'm gonna just bring the island to life. I mention it in pretty much every game, but typically you want to animate your non-forest lands. Just maximizes your mana if your Nissa sticks around next turn and you have to block or they are able to kill your land somehow. Here, if we were playing a blue deck, it would also give us access to Mystical Dispute. Alright, so we definitely got pretty lucky to come out on top that game. We drew the Shatter the Sky on the perfect turn. I think we're going to want the Dream Trawler as a way to potentially have a big life linker. And we definitely want all of the Aether Gusts. In terms of cards we don't want on the draw, the two Mystical Disputes are the obvious cut. And probably... We're cutting both Gnar sets here. It's just really bad against an aggressive deck when we're on the draw. Doesn't do much at all. I think this looks pretty good. Could also consider bringing in some number of Devout Decree to hit their red creatures. It feels like they're mostly a green creature deck though, with a little bit of red thrown in. I'm going to bring in 2 of them and get rid of 2 Teferi. That way, we should have a target for them when they come up without being flooded when they have just a bunch of green creatures. And Teferi is pretty bad on the draw against an aggressive deck as well. Yeah, I think we'll go with this configuration. Knight of Autumn is a pretty strong card against the aggressive decks. The ability to make it a 4/3 or gain life, depending on what's most needed, is really helpful. And I like having the ramp and Uro for life gain and an additional ramp. And this is a good starting hand is what I'm trying to say. So we're going to keep it. And right now the plan is Growth Spiral into Uro into maximizing our mana. Right, our opponent did mulligan. We're going to obviously play our lands tapped whenever possible. Although, now that I say that, I realize I should have led with the Hallowed Fountain. That would give us the ability to Growth Spiral without taking any damage here. So that was a mistake. If we lose by exactly 2 life, I will certainly own up to that punt. Alright, so Rule Spellbreaker here. I'm going to go ahead and Growth Spiral. We'll put this into play tapped. And here I am going to Uro and Growth Spiral. Just getting as much mana as possible while still gaining some life to buffer our life total is really nice. And then just play out the island actually. And shortly we'll be able to actually both bring back Uro and play a very large Hydroid Crisis, which hopefully is enough to stabilize. Embercleave is always the scary card when you're playing the aggressive decks, so you gotta kind of every single turn ask yourself what happens if they Embercleave here. Questing Beast is also a pretty good card, but not quite as scary as the Embercleave. And Shatter the Sky here is, again, a great draw. They will get to draw a single card off of this, but being able to wipe out all of their threats next turn is really strong. Go ahead and sack this now. And I go ahead and grab the plains here. And we definitely need to shatter, so we'll start off by doing that. So Questing Beast from them is scary here. This is an excellent card. Obviously, if we can stick Nissa and then play out Hydroid Crisis, it really should put the game out of reach. Okay, Paradise Druid, much less scary. Go ahead and play out the Nissa. I should not have trusted the auto tapper on that, unfortunately. I needed to keep up a forest so that we could play Knight of Autumn and still have an untapped land to protect us. So that was really unfortunate. Another good tip though, don't always just trust the auto tapper, especially with a card like Nissa. Going to go ahead and animate the breeding pool here. This gives us the ability to potentially play out a Tamiyo. That does leave us a little bit vulnerable to Questing Beast Could get back Shadow the Sky, though, to really lock them out. That honestly seems kind of greedy. I think I just want to make sure I have a large blocker, and then we can Hydroid Krasis next turn. So here we do survive an Embercleave. Embercleave plus something like Infuriate gets us. Alright, and here we can Knight of Autumn to get rid of Embercleave and bring back Uro. That seems really, really strong. So let's go ahead and do that. And don't think there's a reason to play this untapped. I'm very glad we did not take the super greedy route last turn. Let's go ahead and animate a forest, get it with some attacks, and then play out Tamiyo. And here, we'll just look for... We already have a Hydroid Krasis. Another one can't hurt. Alright, and at this point, I don't think there's a combination of cards that beats us. We have enough blockers, including a very large blocker. Yeah, and we get the good game, so good game. On to round number 5. All right, so let's finish strong with this ultimate Bant deck. That was a fun match, and hopefully this round goes as well as the previous 4. I think one lesson that I'm always trying to remember is to not always take the greediest route and get your most out of every single mana and card. That tends to be a way that games of Magic that you're currently winning slip away. I think that came up with the Tamiyo versus Knight of Autumn decision last game. Alright, so the mono red deck is going to be a particularly bad matchup for us, especially game 1. Here, we don't have a play until Uro. We'll let them draw the Temple of Plenty. Robber of the Rich does a nice job of messing up your opponent's scries, so if you're playing against Robber of the Rich, you typically want to just leave a land on top so that they can't gain any real advantage from drawing that additional card. So we can Uro into Nissa, but at that point we are likely out of the game.
I'm known for my excellent timing. Here goes nothing.
Okay, we do draw a land that won't cause us to pay life at least. And I think very smartly they've ticked up the Teferi, just to make sure that they can bounce anything that we play in terms of a blocker. Kind of an interesting board state. You don't normally see mono red with a Teferi in play. Okay. So here we can
Here we go.
Nissa or Elspeth Conquers Death. If we Nissa, they are going to bounce the land. If we Elspeth Conquers Death, we do get rid of the Bone Crusher. That's a tough one. I think I have to Elspeth Conquers Death, getting rid of the Bone Crusher here. And then next turn, we can Nissa or we can Narset, hoping to find something, but there's not really a lot of somethings short of Shatter the Sky. And we don't have the mana to Narset and Shatter the Sky next turn.
Like it.
Okay, so we are down to 5. Yeah, I needed to draw the natural Shatter the Sky again, but that's a bit much to ask for that. 2 matches in a row. So here, there's really no way for us to survive. We can make a 3-3 blocking one thing, but they've got us, and they have Teferi Bounce. So we'll throw in the towel on game 1 and reconfigure for the next 2 games. All the Devout Decrees, all the Aether Gusts. Mystical Dispute is gone. Narset is gone. Elspeth Conquers Death is gone. And yeah, I think that's it. Occasionally I consider bringing in Dovin's Veto just to stop Embercleave. But I think being proactive and having things like Teferi are just better. So we're going to run with this. Kiliad's Intervention is another small consideration. Could potentially use it for the life gain in an emergency. But anytime you're spending your turn to just gain life, you are probably losing because you haven't actually advanced your board state. So I don't think it's worth it to bring in for Embercleave and life gain. Oof. It's a really slow start against Mono Red. We don't really have any early plays, no ramp. I'm going to mull this. And this is much better. Having the Devout Decree makes a big difference. Being able to stop one of their early plays, having multiple scries, just is a big difference. So we'll keep 6. And this is a great combination of cards. I think I probably want to keep both of them and get rid of the Breeding Pool. We should be able to hit up to 5 land drops with the scries. And having the combination of Nissa and Hydroid Krasis is just really strong. And just trying to make sure I'm playing my lands in a way that I can take as little pain from them coming into play untapped as possible. So depending on what they do turn 1, okay, not a whole lot. So here we can Growth Spiral and Scry once we see what their turn 2 play is. And again, we're just going to be looking to hit land drops now. Once we get up to 5 lands, we should be in good shape. It's possible that I should have thrown back the Hydroid Krasis and just kept the 4 lands to really guarantee that we get there. But we have a lot of ramp, a lot of scry, and ways to hit our land drops. I think it's so valuable to have this combination that it's worth keeping. Alright, our opponent is taking their time this game. Runaway Steamkin. Alright, so we just want to see a land on top. Ooh, Shatter the Sky, very interesting. I'm actually going to bottom this. I really just want to hit land drops. And we have a way to deal with the Runaway Steamkin. So let's Uro first, and depending on whether or not we hit a land, we can decide if we want to put this into play tapped or untapped. Alright, we found another Shatter the Sky, which is awesome. And that can go into play tapped. So unless they have something crazy like 3 1-drops into, you know, a huge play, we should be in pretty good shape. And even if they do have the 3 1-drop plan, we do have Shatter the Sky to take advantage of that. Alright, and this is sort of the worst nightmare. They hit the light up the stage and are going to get to use this mana, but we will be able to really take out a lot of their board. So I think they should still certainly go for it. They don't know that we have Shatter the Sky, so they should use the Runaway Steamkin counters to play a couple additional spells, like the Rimrock Knight possibly. Okay, Anax is actually a much better play if they had that, because it does sort of protect them from Shatter the Sky. So here we really want to Devout Decree Anax. I would love to play Uro first, hoping to hit a land and then Devout Decree, but that does seem a little bit greedy. So I think I'm just going to Devout Decree the Anax and make sure I can hit a land drop next turn. And there it is. Alright, so again they have the opportunity to throw all of their permanents onto the board. Torbrand is good, it's going to get us for a lot of damage, but being able to get rid of all of their permanents and still be at 11 life. Also, the Rimrock Knight they will still be able to play because it's an exile. Well, we have to Shatter here. And then next turn, we can play Nissa. We're also getting close to being able to bring back Uro. Alright, and they've rebuilt pretty well here. Go ahead and Nissa. Play a tapped land and animate the plains, with the plan of trading off with Anax, and they are out of cards in hand now. They just have the one exiled Rimrock Knight. I think it actually makes sense to attack here. We're happy to have them trade, I think. Though maybe not. I'd rather actually not give them the additional 1/1s and not have a blocker, so we'll keep it back. Tectonic Giant, really interesting. Alright, well, certainly going to trade with Anax here. Okay, and I think a huge Hydroid Krasis is the best bet. Alternatively, we could play Teferi plus Uro. Maybe bouncing the Tectonic Giant and Hydroid Krasis next turn. I think we have to Hydroid Krasis here. I would like to have a 3/3 blocker though as well. So if that's the case, then Uro into Teferi is better. Oh, and we draw an Aether Gust, which is excellent. So let's Teferi. Bouncing Tectonic Giant. Play out the Temple Garden and animate Temple of Mystery here. And now we have the ability to Aether Gust the Tectonic Giant on the way down, and it feels like we found a way to turn the corner. Well, we will also certainly... Oh, I don't want to actually Aether Gust on the way down. I'm going to do it afterward, because I'd love to block with this if possible. That means the Scorch Spitters are going to get in, though. Well, let's see how this works out, because I can do it in response to the Scorch Spitter triggers. So we'll do it at the last possible second to avoid taking any extra damage. But yeah, unfortunately this is going to happen before we can declare blockers. So I can't actually block and then do this, because I'll take 4 extra damage. Alright. So we can play a huge Hydroid Krasis. We can bring back an Uro.
Here we go.
The threat of Torbrand is real, though. We're going to take a ton of damage off of these Scorch Spitters. And the Hydroid Krasis will not gain us enough life to stay alive through that, I don't believe. Take 6 just from the Scorch Spitter triggers. So maybe bringing back an Uro and hoping to find another Aether Gust or something makes sense. I like keeping Shatter in, because then we can maybe get it with a Tamiyo. I can do this. For 4 and then have a blocker still from the land. Can only do it for 3 actually. Ooh, Knight of Autumn.
Rise, my elemental friend.
Yeah, unfortunately, this doesn't quite do it. Torbrand is going to be enough to get us down to -1 here. Unless they mess up. Nope, they did not mess up. Alright. Well, a tough match against the mono red deck there. Some pretty interesting decision points. Alright. Still got one more chance to get to 5 wins. Let's give it a go. Yeah, I do think mono red is probably the worst matchup for this Bant deck, especially in game 1. You don't have a whole lot of ways to beat it unless you're lucky enough to quickly ramp over the top. Ugh. This hand has lands and spells, but it's a pretty bad combination. I'm actually going to mulligan this. As much as I hate to give up my 7 cards when I have, you know, some lands and some playable spells, I'm missing the ramp, and we don't have really any impactful plays here. And the double Teferi is a non-bow. Oof. Yeah, I can't keep the 1-lander, so we'll try one more time. We'll have to keep that one. Alright, and it looks like we may be playing a Teamer Clover deck. So here, Knight of Autumn is going to be a strong card. I don't know if there's anything I'd want to Mystical Dispute on the next turn. I think I'm going to play this tapped. Seems unlikely for them to play a blue spell that I would want to counter here. They're pinched on lands, maybe Fae of Wishes, but they still get to draw the card off the Innkeeper. Yeah, and that was a much more likely outcome there. Alright, so we found Uro. We can start ramping and we can get Nissa down next turn. As long as we find one more land. Now here, they're going to be on 4 mana and they may actually go for granted, so I am going to pay the 2 life. And it is certainly a bit of a giveaway, but I think the ability to stop a granted, if that is their game plan, is worth it. If we don't hit our next land drop, we can Tamiyo and start planning to get Uro back. Yeah, and we are able to pick off the granted. And it looks like they are pinched on their colors since I haven't seen any red mana, and I don't think this is a straight Simic deck. So here we do hit our land. We go ahead and get Nissa down and animate the plains.
Strange and magnificent world. The land shall conquer you.
And then next turn, probably Tamiyo, unless we draw something better. So if they want to get rid of Nissa, unless they have some sort of a bounce spell, like a Brazen Borrower, they're going to have to throw everything at Nissa, and I'll block the Edgewall Innkeeper. So they have another Fae of Wishes, so they will get to resolve granted this time. It'll be interesting to see what they choose to draw with it. I don't know their exact sideboard. I'm trying to think of what I would grab if I were in their situation, though. Usually something like Escape to the Wilds makes sense, but here they don't have the red mana. Okay, they just get an Aether Gust. And they're going to go straight for us and get rid of Nissa with Aether Gust next turn. Okay. So let's go with Tamiyo. What do we most need to draw here? I guess either a Shatter to the Sky or an Elspeth Conquers Death. Don't really want to shatter and lose all my lands, so Elspeth Conquers Death seems really good.
Let me aid your research.
Alright, and just a whole bunch of lands there, unfortunately. Go ahead and scry here. Don't want another Nissa. So we do have the ability to bring Uro back. Let's go ahead and animate and attack and then do that.
The land fights for us.
And the nice thing is we can do it and still keep up the plains as a blocker. And just a whole bunch of lands really in the graveyard. Okay. So here they are not going to be able to kill us outright. Unless they have a way to also remove the plains. I was going to say they can Aether Gust Uro, but we will be able to throw the plains in front as a blocker. And I believe Brazen Borrower says non-land permanent, so that would not get the trick done in terms of getting rid of the plains. So I'm expecting in Aether Gust on Nissa, their own life total is definitely getting threatened as well. They did finally find red mana. Okay, and they have a Clover, which they must have just drawn this turn. If they have Bone Crusher Giant plus Aether Gust, that does do it. So if they see that line, double Bone Crusher to get rid of plains, Aether Gust, Uro, They can hit us for exactly 7, unfortunately. Alright, so here, still Bone Crusher Giant would do it. Yeah. Oh man, close one. That was a good game. Yeah, they found the red mana just in the nick of time. Alright, well, against a Lucky Clover deck, I definitely want some amount of Dovin's Vetoes. Probably all of them. Being able to counter the Clover and also counter the Adventure part of the spell and get rid of that card, not letting it go into exile, is really helpful. I like having the 3 Knight of Autumns. Aethergust hits most of their cards, so that seems really good as well. Now, what do I want to cut? I don't really need Shatter the Sky. I'm not so worried about them flooding the board. Mystical Dispute can pick off the Granted and Brazen Borrower pretty easily. But I do need to make 4 more cuts here, even if I don't bring in anything else. I'm going to go down a couple to fairies. Down... Yeah, 2 Elspeth Conquers Death as well. A lot of their cards are cheap, so I don't think I need all of them. And I almost want to bring in the Agent of Treachery. Sometimes they have things like the Great Henge that could be really nice to steal, but feels a little bit greedy. I think I'm just going to run it like this. Alright, and we'll play first. And we'll mull that one. Do need some lands. This seems really good. We have Aethergust, Knight of Autumn, and Nissa. It'd be nice to have some ramp. I don't need the second Nissa here. Just looking for lands or ramp. So here, if they turn 2 Lucky Clover, we can blow it up with the Knight of Autumn. We can also, after they draw, put an Innkeeper on top here if they play a turn 1 Innkeeper. Definitely going to shock here. And again, we have an answer to pretty much all of their early plays between Knight of Autumn and Aethergust. And Uro arrives just in time. Feels like they do have a Bone Crusher in hand and the Stomp off. Definitely, even if we didn't draw the Uro, I would strongly consider holding on to Knight of Autumn there. Because the Clover is such a key card. I don't really want to give up one of our few ways of getting rid of it. Even though making a 4-3 could be a way to put a little bit of pressure on them, which could also be important. One of the really difficult things about playing both with and against the Temur Clover deck is it has so many different game plans. It can be a combo deck, a control deck, an aggressive deck. So you really have to take that into account pretty much on every turn. It's also a really fun deck to play for that reason. So they do have the Stomp that we thought they had. And if we had a land on our next draw, we can run out Nissa. Okay, and they're going to start putting a little bit of pressure on us with the Bone Crusher. Actually not going to activate that yet. We'll wait until our turn to do it. Hopefully we can draw in. Have 1 extra in the deck. There we go. Alright, so now we can go ahead and grab a Forest and play out Nissa, and then keep up Aethergust. Feels like a really solid turn. The only downside to this is that we are going to probably have to trade off the breeding pool with the Bone Crusher. It's possible it's better to just grab a hallowed fountain, and attack with it. I'm actually going to do that. I expect to be trading off this land, and I do not want to lose a forest. So this does mean that we won't be able to Aether Gust until our next turn, but it feels worth it to get rid of their threat and not lose a lot of mana. And now it's really up to them to start putting the pressure on, because with an active Nissa, they are the ones that are sort of on the back foot and need to start generating their own play. Okay, and looks like maybe they've got another stomp up. I'm going to start out by playing this Uro. And think it makes sense to put this into play tapped here. Nope, I'm actually going to put it into play untapped. I'll take that back. Maximize our Aether Gust ability. And even though I am afraid of the Clover, I think at this point we want to really take control of the game and put a lot of pressure on them. So I'm going to go ahead and play out this Night of Autumn. In case... yeah, we'll go ahead and do that. And now I'm going to go ahead and get in there with a Temple of Mystery. This allows us to have Aether Gust up, but again, not necessarily worry about losing one of our forests. And I think having this much pressure also kind of prevents them from going Escape to the Wilds and sort of winning a long game, because there's a lot that they have to deal with immediately, and taking an entire turn to just play Escape and maybe one other 2-mana spell, I don't think is a realistic way for them to win this game. Alright, but they're going to try, and we're going to really get them because we are going to Aether Gust that. Okay. So we can play this tapped. And animate it. And I don't think there's any way for them to get back into this game now, especially since we do have the Aether Gust. I guess Storm's Wrath would be kind of annoying, but even that wouldn't be enough. Edgewall Innkeeper. Okay, I'm going to let that resolve. Okay, drawing a card off of the Fae of Wishes. Yeah, and on to game 3. So, I don't know that anything has changed from the sideboarding for game 2. I do like having some number of mystical disputes. I don't think I want a lot of them, especially when we're on the draw. It feels like this is a pretty good configuration. I'm going to bring in one Dream Trawler and take out one Teferi. It is really hard for them to deal with a Dream Trawler, so I like having that as our top end. And Teferi is certainly a little bit worse on the draw. And I think kind of doing what we did last game in getting some early pressure on them is one of the ways to beat this deck, which is a really, really difficult deck to play against. Alright, and still no lands in sight, so this is definitely going to be a mulligan. Looks like our opponent might be considering mulliganing as well. This is much, much better. We'll keep this. And kind of unclear what we should put back. I think it's probably Hydroid Crisis. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Like having a little bit of early interaction with Mystical Dispute. And we really want to make sure that we hit Nissa on time, so I don't think we can afford to put a land back here. And again, I don't see a 2-mana blue spell that they're going to be playing that I would want to counter, so I am going to just play that tapped. Even if they're playing a 1/4 Fae of Wishes to draw a card, I don't know that's what I want to use my Mystical Dispute on. They still get the card just for casting it. Okay, the Lucky Clover is pretty scary, so they've got both of their engines online in the first 2 turns. That doesn't bode particularly well. Gonna go ahead and play out a tapped Temple Garden here. So we will be able to Uro into Nissa on the next 2 turns, but it might not be enough with this start from them. If for some reason they are short on lands, which they are, that might give us the opening that we need. I'm gonna go ahead and play the Castle Vantress here. Unfortunately, this will stop us from being able to Aether Gust, but certainly ramping into Nissa is our best bet. And I'm going to be a little bit sneaky here and play out the Fabled Passage, because we can fetch an island and potentially Mystical Dispute a blue spell here. If I had played the Hallowed Fountain untapped, it would be a bit of a giveaway. So see, they're considering at least stomping us twice. Which I'm surprised they didn't do, because I could see them hoping to hit a 3rd land and just play out the Bone Crusher. Alright, they will get 2 1/1s off of this Lovestruck Beast. But no 3rd land yet. And at this point I'm going to fetch a Forest, so we can play Nissa. And another Forest seems good with this out.
We will not fail.
And we will animate the Hallowed Fountain and start attacking.
Nature's true power.
So if they do have Bone Crusher, they can double stomp the Hallowed Fountain and attack Nissa. But at this point, we are generating a nice mana advantage. So this is an interesting attack. I'm going to block the Edgewall Keeper for sure. Alright, so this does allow them to get rid of Nissa, but at the cost of their Edgewall Keeper and not advancing their board at all. So here, I'm going to go ahead and Uro. Play this out, paying 2 life. I'm going to attack with the Hallowed Fountain. And don't know if there's any point to Growth Spiraling now. I'm going to shock myself one more time. And the plan is to keep up Mystical Dispute, but then Growth Spiral and Aether Gust on their turn. And at this point we're in pretty good shape. They've gone too many turns without hitting that third land. And they've also lost their card draw engine in the Edgewall Innkeeper. Go ahead and scry here. Dovin's Veto is a really good one to have. And so my plan is to scry 2 at the end of their turn and look for one more threat to close out the game. So a Hydroid Crisis or a Planeswalker would be really good. Even a Growth Spiral is good because I believe that gives me enough cards in the yard, yes it does, to bring back an Uro. So we're going to keep the Growth Spiral on top there. And this should do it. Don't really need the Breeding Pool. Although, actually, putting an extra land into play with Uro seems good. This gives us something like Mystical Dispute on a blue spell plus Aether Gust or Dovin's Veto. So we'll play the 2 life. Alright, and they're in chump block mode here. Alright, they did find their third land, but most likely that's going to be too late. And we do have the ability to Mystical Dispute anything here. Alright, so I think it makes the most sense to Dovin's Veto, the Beanstalk Giant. The original, because we do not want that one to get to go on an adventure. And there's not a whole lot they can find for 1 mana here that does much. We'll start with a Growth Spiral. If we can eliminate... oh, that'll be enough to close out the game. I was gonna say, if we can eliminate the 1/1 somehow, that would be enough, but also a Nissa is definitely enough. And here, I think it makes sense to actually play out the Narset. We'll still have Aether Gust mana up. I don't see a way they can punish us for this. And our Narset has not been good to us during this tournament, but I don't think it's going to matter. Alright, and we're going to Mystical Dispute on the original to make sure that they can't put it into play. And that'll do it. We have reached 5 wins in our inaugural 52 weeks of standard tournament. I hope you enjoyed watching. I definitely enjoyed playing this deck, and I hope to see you soon. If you did enjoy, please consider a like and subscribe below. Take care.